And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Friday late morning here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. There are moments in time. There are moments in time which don't necessarily seem as if they're going to be memorable by themselves as they happen. But then you look back on them and you say, this was a major cultural either event, sequence of events, or a major cultural touchstone that was taking place in real time. And I'll give you one example from early 1991 when Patrick Swayze hosted Saturday Night Live. And he had the hair and the look from the movie Point Break, which was coming out that June. And you had a very young, still teenage Mariah Carey as the musical guest. And that was a snapshot of the time. You almost couldn't do it any better. Patrick Swayze was a big star for the time. Unfortunately, he was very young when he passed. And Mariah was just rising like a bullet train. But that was a moment in time. Well, on this day, 1991, the movie Truth or Dare was released in select theaters. For those who don't know, it was a documentary directed by Alek, who made some fairly successful feature films, one of which is a Gen X standard with Brendan Fraser and Patrick Dempsey, Moira Kelly, Josh Hamilton, called With Honors, and Joe Pesci, of course, where Madonna, the top 5 best Madonna songs, in my opinion, she did the song I'll Remember, which is kind of the title, the signature song from that movie. The Alek recorded, I can't even tell you, a couple of 100 hours of footage of Madonna as she was on her now legendary, and people knew back then, this was not just a normal instance of a big musician touring. Madonna's Blond Ambition tour happened at a very particular time as the world was beginning to shift more towards a reality TV ethos. And the irony in a pre-social media world. During the summer of 1990, Madonna was everywhere, literally, figuratively, symbolically. She was everywhere, not just because she was going on her tour and because so many of the songs from that album and that era were huge sellers. They were still making cassettes back then, but CDs had come out and they were gaining more and more traction, more and more market share. But it wasn't just that she had the tour and there was controversy with the Justify My Love music video and some of the things where she, in a kind of a mock-up during the tour, and one of the songs she seems to pleasure herself with a crucifix. You know, we're all excited about what happened with the conclave and the Pope and the Vatican. Well, the Catholic Church did not appreciate Madonna's gesticulations, to use Walt Frazier's favorite word again. On top of all of that, on top of the incessant, pernicious controversy surrounding Madonna as she went on the tour and executed the various stops on the tour, she had made a movie which was being released in the summer of 1990. She made the movie Dick Tracy with the absolute legend Warren Beatty. And because it's Warren Beatty, before he met Annette Bening, that was going to happen not long after the Blond Ambition tour. But Warren Beatty and Madonna were not only co-stars in the world of the film, they actually became boyfriend and girlfriend. And for those who know Madonna more than Warren Beatty, Hollywood's number one, let's just say, charmer. Warren Beatty cut a path through Hollywood's most eligible leading ladies, most eligible single women, and in some cases married women. Warren Beatty got with almost every female co-star in every movie he made, going back to Splendor in the Grass and maybe even before Splendor in the Grass. So it was to no one's surprise that he and Madonna hit it off. And I mean, we could make a lot of jokes, but you're talking about two galvanizing figures, two enormous talents in their respective fields. Warren Beatty wasn't just a great looking dude who apparently, well, let's just say that his nickname could have been John Holmes. He is an enormous talent a brilliant writer, a great film actor, and a terrific top-level Oscar-winning director. I mean, you almost could have had him direct Truth or Dare, what became Truth or Dare. But the Blond Ambition tour had its problems. There were a lot of production issues. This is the same kind of thing that singers of today, it could be Taylor, it could be Janet Jackson in the 90s. It doesn't matter if technology in 2025 is way beyond what it was in the summer of 1990. You're not always going to get the production notes exactly right, and things are going to go wrong, and a headset may not function properly, or Taylor can't reach the furthest reach of the stadium. We've seen these stories. We know these stories. But Madonna of that era, she was in her, I guess, her early 30s at the time. Madonna Louise Ciccone, I think was her, her name if you Google Wikipedia. But she was moving towards being more and more comfortable with everything in her life being filmed. There are very few moments during the documentary, and as I say, Alek shot so much footage that's probably in a vault somewhere, wondering, is there anything that can be done with this? She was magic in front of the camera. She's in the movie. She seems like a reality TV star who happens to just be an incredibly successful musician, not the other way around. She is excited to be part of this process. She was in love with Warren. I don't know if Warren really loved her. I mean, I really don't know. Their relationship was real, though. That was not fake. That was not for the cameras. And some of the actors who appeared with them in Dick Tracy, not Pacino or Dustin Hoffman or any of the other big hitters that Warren recruited, but some of the other people, such as Charlie Korsmo, who went on to have a decent career. He said they more or less they were all over each other when people weren't even looking. Like there was nothing phony about that. But in a keeping up with the Kardashians, in a Vanderpump Rules kind of a society, leave it to Warren Beatty, the legend, a forward thinker, as much as it would be possible for a guy now in his upper 80s to be seen as a forward thinker. Warren Beatty knew where society was headed. This is before the real world, I should point out. Real world New York was a little bit away. That was 92. Warren Beatty, during what became the Truth or Dare documentary, and we don't know, again, how much footage of Beatty himself they got that didn't end up getting used, but there was a moment in the documentary where Warren, and he alternated between being 100% supportive and seemingly comfortable in Alek Keshiashan's presence and answering questions and mingling with her and some of the other celebrities who stopped by in the story, like Little Richard. But he's asked a question about his then partner, Madonna. He is asked, because the cameras are always going. She's taking a shower, the cameras are going. She's peeing, the cameras are going. She's on the phone with her parents. Dad, I've been racy. The father actually says, I saw your show. I thought it was a little racy. When did you get racy? Dad, I've been racy. I mean, great stuff. This movie's chock full of those kinds of exchanges. But Warren Beatty is asked, do you think she always wants to have the camera on? Is she comfortable with the camera always on? And Warren Beatty said she doesn't want to live off camera. And if that isn't about as predictive, and he wasn't making a big deal about it like, look how smart I am, but he knew exactly where things were going. And so we follow her in the movie Truth or Dare. We follow the Blond Ambition tour and, the high points like the New York shows. And then there were issues in Middle America, not for any reason other than they couldn't get the headset to work properly. And see, there are certain things where people get a reputation for being a diva or diva-esque. But Madonna getting angry because her headset is malfunctioning and the people in attendance can't hear her, that's, I would call, a normal reaction to something that just should not have happened. But in the pre-social media era, when Dick Tracy was in the run-up to being released and Madonna was on this tour, everybody knew what she was up to as if she was already a reality star. We didn't even know, or at least I didn't know about the documentary. I was 16 in the summer of 1990. So when Alek Keshiashan assembled all of his footage and got everything together, edited it, etc., when Truth or Dare was wrapped. It actually made its premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, the 1991 Cannes Film Festival. And I don't know what big American films, or I should say what other big American films screened at that festival. I know that Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs had screened at Sundance, which was prior, but I don't know. It's embarrassing that I don't know this. I should. I'm just trying to calculate because, Quentin Tarantino has the famous dialogue in Reservoir Dogs talking about Madonna and how the song Like a Virgin, it's not about a girl who's a virgin, it's about a girl who is, in the immortal words of Raymond Chandler's Philip Marlowe, she's about as hard to get as a haircut, but this guy that she's with makes her feel like a virgin. Now, I don't know that that's correct. I mean, I've never talked to Madonna. Did she ever say that in an interview? I don't think so. That was just Quentin's interpretation. But Truth or Dare premiered out of competition. And I always find it interesting when a big movie that ends up getting huge acclaim, as this film was rapturously praised by the critics of the day. The Rotten Tomatoes score is in the upper 80s. Again, for a documentary, that's a really high score, because we know that documentaries, you look at films like by Michael Moore and Barbara Koppel and my guy Errol Morris, who I love, sometimes there is some polarization, because if there's any political content, you might piss off 40% of the target. You just don't know, right? But Truth or Dare somehow was not in competition at that year's Cannes Film Festival, but apparently it went over really well. Madonna was somebody who was not just popular in the United States. She became a global icon thanks to the success of the Blond Ambition tour. And when Truth or Dare came out, it's like her popularity was at its peak. And to a lesser extent, this is what I meant when I talked about Patrick Swayze and Mariah at Saturday Night Live. And it was the Chris Farley sketch with Patrick Swayze, which to this day, there are many that would say that might be the single greatest sketch in the history of the show. But Patrick was still so young, and he was still healthy, and he was just about the biggest star in Hollywood, and Point Break was even going to advance him further. And then he unfortunately made a couple of movies that didn't work, and his movie career would never reach those heights or get to those heights again. But Madonna was always controversial. She was not ever content to just be a musician. It's a cliche to say that she always tried to push the envelope, but that's really what she did. With the sex book, with the music video, for example, for Justify My Love, and with all of the stuff that upset the Catholic Church during the tour. And when they aired it on HBO, there were a lot of people that said this should not air on HBO, because if memory serves, they aired it towards the end of the Blonde Ambition tour, but before Truth or Dare came out. Now, in the realm of documentaries, and I am someone who studied the form in some detail. I'm not an expert on documentaries, but I learned about a lot of great documentaries, such as Errol Morris's The Thin Blue Line, such as, was it Robert Epstein? The Times of Harvey Milk, a lot of which ended up being used for the film Milk, starring Sean Penn and James Franco, among others. Capturing the Friedmans, an absolutely brutal, bruising documentary. Oh my gosh. And the one from a couple of years ago, Girl in the Picture, which I thought was, almost as good as Errol Morris's The Thin Blue Line. It tells a similar kind of horrifying true crime story where you say, well, how is any of this real? And then you find out, yeah, it all happened pretty much exactly that way. Michael Moore's Roger and Me, I still think is his best film. And that was a documentary which almost played like a regular feature, even though we knew it was a docu. It was so entertaining. And Truth or Dare has the incredible energy, as if we are watching history unfold in real time, and from a 2025 prism. That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what people who saw it, who got in on the ground floor. Now, I did not. I was 17. I did not see, I didn't see Truth or Dare in theaters. I would have wanted to, but I didn't drive yet. And I don't know if it ever got a blanket release on Long Island. I'm not sure. I want to say that it played at the Sunrise Mall, the movies at Sunrise Mall, the kind of multiplex in the old mall, which, alas, is about to be torn down. And I think it might become an Amazon Fresh or a fulfillment center. We don't really know. But I know a lot of people who did see Truth or Dare in theaters, and nobody came away with anything less than, wow, what a great movie. And it doesn't do, because it's not a biographical film about Madonna. It doesn't do what is commonly known as hagiography. It does not overly glamorize. It does not try to paint her as this kind of lone wolf maverick just looking to make her music. It is simply a recounting of the tour, of the cultural imprint at the time, which allows us all these years later to see this changed music. Because now all of the money for musicians, I shouldn't say all, I don't know enough to say that, a large percentage of the money is from touring, because everything is digital. Almost everything is digital. There's very little in the way of physical media, even relative to film. And again, the Christopher Nolan argument of we have to have physical media of some form, or a streaming service. All of the streaming services can give you the middle finger and just refuse to allow people to listen to a certain song or watch a certain movie. But touring is how they make their money. To a large extent, certainly to a larger extent than in the heyday of when cassettes and CDs were both being sold as singles in stores such as FYE and Tower Records. And people my age, we all remember those days of rushing to get a single, or taking a risk when you see a movie soundtrack with one good song that you know for sure, and I hope some of the other 15 songs, I hope they don't all suck. But Madonna turned from Truth or Dare. She shot A League of Their Own just after that. So she was still riding that wave. And she doesn't do anything spectacular in A League of Their Own, but by blending in with the rest of the cast, by not trying to upstage, whether it's Rosie O'Donnell, whether it's Tom Hanks, whether it's the star of the film, Gina Davis, she's really good in that movie. And Hollywood wanted to make her a star. They really did. Because she is such a character. She has incredible charisma and personality. So, she had, of course, Desperately Seeking Susan with, was that Susan Seidelman who directed it? But with Rosanna Arquette, speaking of Tarantino, that famous scene in Pulp Fiction. But Hollywood tried to make her a movie star, and it just didn't take. And there were a couple of different attempts. She did the Swept Away remake a couple of decades, and not good. Unfortunately, Body of Evidence, despite its incredible cast with Frank Langella, Joe Mantegna, the movie is horrible. It makes Basic Instinct look like Citizen Kane. And that's saying a lot. So not everybody is meant to be a movie star. Tom Selleck, wonderful actor. Terrific supporting actor in various films. When they tried to make him a leading man in movies, it just didn't take. And we're lucky that we didn't get a Tom Selleck Raiders of the Lost Ark, because there's a version of The Matrix out there somewhere in the ether where Tom Selleck plays Indiana Jones. And the movies, instead of Raiders of the Lost Ark, it becomes High Road to China, only, looking for the Ark of the Covenant. Some people just aren't supposed to be movie stars. Other people are. And maybe in the case of Madonna, it was just lousy material, because Body of Evidence would have defeated anybody. It was so bad. But that was at the precise point in history where they were turning out one erotic thriller after another, pretty much until the failure of Jade, the William Friedkin film, high gloss. Linda Fiorentino was real hot at the time, and that film really sucked. Coming from a talented writer, we could take shots at him too, but a talented writer such as Joe Esterhaas, and a great master filmmaker in the case of William Friedkin. But Truth or Dare released 34. Damn, I can't even do the math sometimes. That's embarrassing for the son of a CPA. But released 34 years ago today. A transformational, generational documentary about a transformational, generational figure in Madonna, or Madge as she's informally known. This has been episode 508 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your rainy, miserable, now Friday early afternoon here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.